Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now.
You're going to pack the court?
Make sure you, in fact, let people know you're senators. I'm not going to answer the question.
Why would you answer that question?
The question is,
radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe? Who's on your list?
Gentlemen, I think
this is so unprecedented.
He's going to pack the court.
I'm not going to give a list. We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe.
They sure
47 years you've done nothing. They understand.
All right.
Remember that debate and all the interruptions? That was the first time that they debated. That was September 29th, 2020. Let's talk about the lessons from that debate for this rematch. John Dickerson, well, clearly the microphone is going to change things tonight, so there won't be as many interruptions.
That will change things. It's questionable about what Donald Trump learned. We know, well, those of us who covered the Trump presidency, is that there were often moments where his aides, his family went to him, said, you got to tone it down. You've got to be more presidential. And it would stick for very short periods of time. But his gut is something he believes in. Aides have variously talked about his times at rallies as creating a sense of giving him oxygen. He wants to be that person. That person was the one interrupting Joe Biden. The problem for Trump in that debate was that people thought, and the polling showed this, we don't want 4 more years of that in our living room. Joe Biden was there as a representative of returning to the norms of the presidency. We'll see how, and if any of those lessons conveyed to tonight.
Because people thought, oh my gosh, it's the pandemic. Life is too chaotic. I kind of like this Joe Biden. He seems more calming than Donald Trump. Those were the stylistic, at least, differences. There was a lot more, obviously, but that's what I'm saying, that debate and the chaoticness of it, I think, probably stuck with people.
And as I recall, Nora, at the time when he said, because we're all raised in houses where your parents tell you, do not tell anyone to shut up. At the time when he said shut up, I think most people actually understood why he felt that, because he was so exasperated trying to get a word in edgewise. I'd be curious to know where in the debate that moment came. I don't remember it as we sit here today.
It was about halfway through.
It was halfway through.
And even in the room, because we were up in the rafters watching this whole thing, you could just feel it in the room. Everyone was just like, oh gosh, is this what it's going to be like, when they meet again? The fact that the microphone is muted, first of all, we've all heard from people, sources, friends, family, how excited they are that they're finally implementing that rule.
Who do you think
how does
benefits?
that change? I don't know.
You don't.
And I really wonder if either of them has practiced for that phenomenon, because our friends at CNN pointed out yesterday how it's going to work. And if it goes as they say it will, you literally will see lips moving, but you will not be able to hear them. So do they practice facial expressions? Do they, scoff, or do they just stand there and shake their head? No, it's not true. They're going to have to wait their turn. And that changes the dynamic in all these things, because what do we always seize on? It's those moments of friction.
And that is the theater, and that is about the impression. And if you remember, in that period in time back in 2020, Joe Biden was running on this argument of competence in the midst of chaos, restoring order. I mean, we didn't have a vaccine then. We were in the midst of this pandemic that had upended our lives. And that's what's so interesting about Anthony's polling about the economy and people remembering it fondly under Donald Trump, forgetting he was the one who shut down the economy because of what was happening. But I think in our polling, one of the things that's so interesting, Ed, is when we talk about the seriousness of the issues facing the country now, and we are only hearing the theater, we haven't heard, when you look at the polling, 75% of voters say Trump should explain his plans for the future. 69% say Biden should. That implies they haven't heard the affirmative argument for the future of the country.
We haven't heard from either of them.
Well, in fact, the studies have been done by even conservative-leaning economists that Trump's plan to expand tariffs would actually lead to an increase in inflation, correct? Yes. And so that is something that hasn't, that sort of sharp policy debate that I think that voters are craving. Wait a minute, I do want to know what their plan is for the future. How are they going to make my life better and my children's lives better? What are they going to do for me, the taxpayer?
And also, this goes back to, did you prepare for the debate or didn't you prepare for the debate? You can't riff your way through a presidency. You can't just wing it and be kind of in the moment when you're dealing with things like alliances that need to be tended when you have invasions happening. You can't just decide on your economic policy on the fly when you've got massive moving forces globally, also with the advent of artificial intelligence. You have to have a plan. You have to think things through. You have to anticipate. And all of that comes down to this stylistic difference between the two of them. So it is theater review, but it attaches to a crucial thing about the presidency, which is that it is a job that you cannot just improvise your way through.
Don't you find it hard to believe that he's done no preparation? I mean, I know he says that he's prepared for this his whole life when he goes out on rallies, but this is such a big moment for both of them. Because the research, I know Margaret and Nora are like, yeah, I can kind of believe that.
What in his previous behavior would lead you to believe that he's cracking the books?
Because I just think that this is different. There is so much at stake for both of them. There always is. But in this particular case, Joe Biden has to bring it to show, look, that I'm physically capable of doing this. Donald Trump has to show that I can be, quote, presidential, that I can, quote, behave. Well, you can do that.
Yeah.
They both have something to prove to the audience tonight.
We're going to find out in less than 25 minutes.
And I can't wait.
I know, exactly. And when we come back, we're going to talk about these key battleground states, how each campaign thinks they can achieve victory in the race to 270 electoral votes. Remember, that's what it's about, these 7 battleground states. We'll talk about it. You're watching CBS News.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Okay, let's go.
You guys good?
Hey.
All right, we good?
Keep going. It's the clock. It's ticking.
Off we go.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
60 minutes.
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this?
Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming Cartels. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education. Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News streaming.
Welcome to America Decides, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome back to Debate Night coverage here on CBS. We are just moments away from that debate, and we're learning President Biden has just arrived at the debate site. After the debate, President Biden is going to head to North Carolina for a rally tomorrow. North Carolina is one of 7 states where this election will be decided. Now, of those 7 states, Joe Biden won 6 of them in the last election. The one state that he did not win was North Carolina, right, Major Garrett? But I know you're going to break it down for us because I am so obsessed with these 7 states.
Exactly. Good evening, Nora. Good evening, everyone. I know it feels a little early to bring back our old friend, the Electoral College map, but look, we have a presidential debate in June, so it gets early around here with the campaign 2024. So, stop me if you've heard this before. Who wins this election is going to come down to 7 battleground states. Nora just referred to them. What are they? Let's go through them once again. Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and as Nora just mentioned, North Carolina, as well as Georgia. Now, in 2020, Biden won 6 of those states. So we asked each campaign, what do they think is the easiest path for them to achieve victory? Let's first start with the incumbent President Biden. Now, if he wins all the lean and likely Democratic states on our friend the map, he just needs to win the states the campaign affectionately calls the blue wall. That's Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. The president would also again need to pick up the 1 electoral vote from Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. That would put him at exactly 270 electoral votes. We all know that's the magic number. Now let's flip to the Trump side of the equation. If he wins all the lean and likely Republican states he won 4 years ago, the campaign feels their clearest path to victory: hold North Carolina, which he won in 2020, and then flip battleground states Georgia and Pennsylvania. That would bring Trump right to 270. Of course, we all know the easiest path to victory is not always how elections play out, so here's at least one more scenario. Let's say Trump carries every state he won in 2020, along with the same electoral votes from Nebraska and Maine. That would put him at 235 electoral votes. If Trump wins the 3 states he lost in 2020 by less than 1%, that's Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia, he would have 272 electoral votes and be returned to the Oval Office. Nora and everyone, back to you.
All right, Major. Thank you. Gail?
Thank you, Major. We are joined now by CBS News political contributors, Democratic strategist Joel Payne and Republican strategist Terry Sullivan. Guys, good to see you both.
Hey there,
hello,
Gail.
hello. Hello. Joel, we're going to start with you. What do you think Biden needs to do tonight to win this debate?
Well, I think, Gail, there are 2 C's: contrast and consolidation. The president needs to focus on consolidating his base. It's something that Donald Trump has been able to do more effectively to this point. Joe Biden needs to focus on bringing home those core Democratic constituencies that have waned a bit in public opinion polls. And I think focusing on abortion, focusing on democracy, I think he'll hope to accomplish that, and accomplish that with contrast, showing that this is a race between 2 very different presidents with 2 very different visions of America. And I think if Joe Biden is able to put that forward, he and his campaign will feel very confident they have a successful night tonight.
We'll see. You know, Terry, listen, Donald Trump could almost say the exact same thing. What does a win look like for him tonight?
You know, in my experience, Gail, of prepping candidates for these debates is you've got both a strategic goal and a tactical goal. And the tactical goal is to have that viral breakout moment, that soundbite. And that's really important. Whatever the message is, that you have these moments that are concise and get played over and over again for days after the debate. Strategically, Trump needs to make this about the issues that voters care about and that he's leading on, like the economy, inflation, crime, the securing securing the border, those are the issues that he's really, winning on at the moment, and that voters care about the most, and prosecute the case against Joe Biden for doing a poor job on those issues. And I think he can do that.
Terry, I think you're so right about a viral moment, because for people that don't watch the whole debate like we intend to do, what they rely on are those clips that they see on the news the very next day. Thank you both.
All right, ahead, we'll give you a sneak peek into how we plan to fact-check the candidates.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun. But wait, there's more. Experience thought-provoking.
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
You're looking at Atlanta, and we are just minutes away from the first presidential debate. A lot will happen on the stage there, and our team here will fact-check what the candidates say. Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett is leading that effort. Major, I think it's going to be a busy night for you.
It's going to be a busy night. Look, the campaigns and the candidates will fact-check themselves. But we have a team of journalists that we have built here at CBS, not for just this debate, Nora, but for the entire campaign and for everything that falls into the disinformation, misinformation space. Forensic journalists, data journalists who will do this work 7 days a week from now until forever, basically. Tonight, we will unveil the CBS Confirmed team to take a look at the things that the campaigns and the candidates say tonight that most need a fact check. Either there's missing context or it's a complete falsehood. We will explain all of that and, not just tonight, but throughout this process with the CBS Confirmed team, show our work. How did we reach the conclusion to verify something is true or identify it as something false or something in between. We'll not only explain the verdict we've reached, but how we got there.
That's excellent. I think we're all looking forward to that. It's such an important element of what we do is fact-checking this. I also just think about having covered so many presidential contests, we usually have the candidates lay out big pieces of policy, like their tax plan or their health plan, or in the case of Trump, who has talked about a lot of things that he was going to unveil. It just hasn't happened. There's no big policy discussion.
Think about how much we used to talk about health care. I mean, in the Obama years. And it was a constant, and then in the Democratic primary, one of the things is that ideas weren't really debated in the Republican primary because the major candidate didn't participate. So we haven't had debate, policy debates have kind of died out over the last several cycles, but it really now is threadbare. And that's one of the challenges for the moderators tonight, which is to get them to do more than just give kind of a top line, but in fact articulate what and how their policies would work.
And you got some pretty hefty. We've never seen anything like this before either. That's
because there are two presidents.
Yes, because there are two presidents, and because there seemed to be such dissatisfaction with both candidates on both sides. I also find that very fascinating, that both sides say, I'm not happy with my choices.
I think back to the debate that y'all moderated in early 2020. What was one of the biggest headlines coming out of that night?
Well, that was like herding cats, though. That was very difficult.
The big headline was Joe Biden made a policy pledge, right? Yes. I will nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court, and I will make that happen on my first choice. That was a new policy thing. It was a headline. It was something he could run on the rest of the time. What's to say one of them doesn't do that tonight and suggest something meaty and somewhat policy-driven that drives headlines?
Who might that be, Ed?
Who would propose that?
Yes.
I mean, either of them could do it.
No, who might that be that you think would create a headline? Because I think debates are about messaging and they're about moments. It's what Terry said. Somebody is going to try to make a moment, whether deliberately, in a good way, or inadvertently.
But somebody
wants a moment.
But we'll stay grounded and knowing that actually they're not defined by what they do in these 90 minutes. They have huge, long records.
Yes.
Promises made in the evening. We have a record against which we can check them, whether they're just blowing smoke or whether they've put together a team and a vision to execute that idea. Because these two candidates have been tested in the job and facing the reality that tonight might get into fantasy.
And how do you characterize each other's record? Each president has 4 years, nearly 4 years for Joe Biden, a full 4 years for President Trump. And if they wade into that and they mischaracterize that, we will be there to describe what is or isn't true.
What we see in our polling so often, though, is the short memories Americans have.
Sure.
And so it's not just fact-checking, it's reminding people that when they tried to recast Donald Trump as Ronald Reagan, peace through strength, well, actually, he tried to pull troops out of Germany, South Korea, and Japan. That it is not about America fighting wars now, as Donald Trump will say. America's not actively involved in wars. We're just in such a different information space, and I think that's what's fascinating about what you're doing here, Major, where we are not just fact-checking and elevating truth. We have to actively bring down untruths and tell you, no, this is wrong, this is why it's wrong. Because that eco-space out there is spreading these untruths in ways, in outlets other than ours.
We are moments away from this debate. Let's get a quick check-in with Nancy Cordes and Robert Costa there in Atlanta. Nancy?
Nora, the president is going to want to talk about a range of issues tonight: reproductive rights, taxes, the economy. But first and foremost, he wants to make the case that Donald Trump is too dangerous to allow back into the Oval Office. He'll say he's now a convicted felon, that he inspired the January 6th insurrectionists, that he admires dictators, that he's under indictment here in Georgia in this very county, Fulton County. That is the overarching case that he's looking to make.
Let me know if you can hear me. I've just adjusted another setting.
Nancy Cordes, thank you.
It's
Robert Costa,
showing,
you are there in the
showing
spin
on my
room
audio
as well. Final
that
thoughts.
I have this input. I'm curious if it's outputting
I just was
to you.
speaking to some Trump campaign advisors, and they said this is all about former President Trump trying to win over those Nikki Haley Republicans. He's already got his base.
Test.
Can
you hear
his
me?
temperament tonight, his
Thanks for tuning
personality,
in.
his answers on really important policy issues, can it convince independents, traditional Republicans, those who have skepticism about him, to give him another shot, a full look? We'll see. 90 minutes, it's political war between these two.
Robert Costa, thank you very much. And, you know, I'm anxiously awaiting what's going to happen, because I do feel like this is going to be not only a clash of personality, but hopefully a clash of ideas about not only their own records, but what they'll do in the future.
And you know, Nora, one of the things that comes back to me again and again is how serious the issues are that are facing the country right now. And that it has to be more than a tweet or a bumper sticker, and that we are excited there's a debate when that used to be the very basic expectation of what voters were required to hear, an actual cogent, explanation of what someone was offering when they were arguing to be your commander-in-chief.
And when there's a bipartisan agreement on immigration about how to do that, where Democrats went the most conservative that they've ever gotten and pushed them there, and they still couldn't get a deal done.
Americans can steal this debate back from the political system and say, they didn't answer my questions, they didn't talk about what I want, and demand that from the candidates. They don't have to take what's being fed tonight.
All right. Thanks to all of you, and our coverage of the CNN presidential debate will continue momentarily here on CBS News 24/7 and on your local CBS station. Up next, the next and first presidential debate.
Welcome if you just joined us. Let me know, can you hear this? Are we still getting a sound issue here? We are just a few minutes away from this being live on the top of the hour. Donald Trump, Joe Biden. Can you hear me?
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that, Art?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that? Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has that glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
On Face the Nation, the way to learn is to listen.
We may have a recession.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, my God.
Is it good? Mm-hmm. Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
If we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
Let me know if you can hear me here.
A pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education.
Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News streaming.
Welcome to America Decides.
When people say who's first to get in the morning, that would be me. Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here.
We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way.
We'll take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
Stakes in this election couldn't be higher. November 5th will be the most important day in the history of our country.
This is a CBS News special, America Decides, the first presidential debate. Now reporting, Nora O'Donnell.
Good evening. We are just moments away from one of the most consequential events of this presidential campaign. President Biden and former President Trump face off in the first debate of the general election, the two meeting for the first time since 2020. They will outline their contrasting visions for America. This is also a chance for you, the voters, to judge the candidates in one of the only face-to-face confrontations before the election. Our CBS News team will be back after the debate for analysis and fact-checking. Now to Atlanta for the first presidential debate hosted by CNN.
Highest office. Each will make his case to the American
All right, good luck, everyone.
Just over
See how we
4
go.
months until Election Day. Good evening, I'm Dana Bash, anchor of CNN's Inside Politics and co-anchor of State of the Union.
I'm Jake Tapper, anchor of CNN's The Lead and co-anchor of State of the Union. Dana and I will co-moderate this evening. Our job is to facilitate.
Welcome, everyone. Let us know where you're tuning in from. I know some of you are not in the States here. You're on some pretty crazy time zones. You're saying in New Zealand, or maybe in the morning already. Okay, got it.
On the left side of the screen, President Biden will be appearing on the right. A coin toss determined their positions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question and 1 minute each for responses and rebuttals. An additional minute for follow-up, clarification, or response is at the moderator's discretion.
When it's time for a candidate to speak, his microphone will be turned on and his opponent's microphone will be turned off. Should a candidate interrupt when his microphone
That's
is
the big
muted,
change this time
it will
around.
be difficult to understand for viewers at home. At the end of the debate,
Let's see how
each
the big
candidate
change.
will get 2 minutes for closing statements. There is no studio audience tonight. Pre-written notes, props, or contact with campaign staff are not permitted during the debate. By accepting our invitation to debate, both candidates and their campaigns agreed to accept these rules.
Now, please welcome the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Folks, how are you? Great to be here. Thank you.
And please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Well, I guess this has never happened before, having a former and current president not just debate, but just run like this.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin the debate, and let's start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern, the economy. President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120. And typical home prices have jumped more than 30%. What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
We got to take a look at what I was left when I became president and what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach into your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed. There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so what we had to do was try to put things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out the position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come of a household where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem. The price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. And we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over. The combination that I was left with in corporate greed is the reason why we're in this problem right now. In addition to that, we're in a situation where if you take a look at all that was done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos, literally chaos. And so we put things back together. We created, I said, those jobs. We make sure we had a situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is a major issue for many people, to $15 for a insulin shot as opposed to $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they can include beginning next year. in a situation and we're going to make that available to everybody, to all Americans. So we're working to bring down the price.
Biden sounds more kind of breathless than I was thinking.
That's what we're going to get done.
I don't know if he's not well.
Thank you. President Trump?
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID, and when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars, and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce-back jobs, a bounce-back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world. He's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he had the greatest economy in the world. And, you know, the fact of the matter is that we found ourselves in a situation where his economy, he rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion. He raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant. And the military, you know, when he was president, they were still killing people in Afghanistan. He didn't do anything about that. When he was president, we were still finding ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
Am I allowed to respond to him?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want with the minute that we give you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cause countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China, it's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down, and then they bounced back, and he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. No, he inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months. And then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing. And they don't know what they were doing. It was the worst, probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years, under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt, while so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes than they do now?
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But we spurred, that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with. We gave him something great. Remember, more people died under his administration even though we had largely fixed it. More people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in his administration. He did the mandate, which is a disaster, mandating it. The vaccine went out. He did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most objected to about the vaccine. And he did a very poor job, just a very poor job. And I will tell you, not only poor there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership. They don't respect the United States anymore. We're like a third world nation between weaponization of his election, trying to go after his political opponent. All of the things he's done, we've become like a third world nation, and it's a shame. The damage he's done to our country, and I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
President Trump, we will get to immigration later in this block. President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our health care system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people, they cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like us. We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
This is the first presidential election since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This morning, the court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Correct.
However, the federal government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion pill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex, but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives. Everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this, and getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say the same thing. Texas is different. Florida is different. But they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people. Like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't. Follow your heart. But you have to get elected also. And because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected. The problem they have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided. Supported Roe. And that's this idea that they're all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the states should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor, have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states, let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in, they talk about that. But here's the deal. There's a lot of young women who are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters, it's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
There have been many young women murdered by the same people he allows to come across our border. We have a border that's the most dangerous place anywhere in the world, considered the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. And he opened it up, and these killers are coming into our country, and they are raping and killing women. And it's a terrible thing. As far as the abortion is concerned, it is now back with the states. The states are voting. In many cases, it's frankly a very liberal decision. In many cases, it's the opposite. But they're voting, and it's bringing it back to the vote of the people, which is what everybody wanted, including the founders, if they knew about this issue, which, frankly, they didn't. But they would have. Everybody wanted it brought back. Ronald Reagan wanted it brought back. He wasn't able to get it. Everybody wanted it brought back, and many presidents had tried to get it back. I was the one to do it. And again, this gives it the vote of the people, and that's where they wanted it. Every legal scholar wanted it that way.
Staying on the topic of abortion, President Biden, 7 states, I'll let you do that. This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can obtain an abortion. Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I supported Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. The first time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last. No politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what you're going to do. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
So that means he can take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat-run, take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Virginia, put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican. Nobody wants it to happen.
That is simply not true. The Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only if a woman's life is in danger, she's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period. Period, period.
Under Roe v. Wade, you have late-term abortion. You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
For 51 years, that was the law. 51 years, constitutional scholarship said it was the right way to go. 51 years, and it was taken away because this guy put very conservative members on the Supreme Court. He takes credit for taking it away. What's he going to do? What's he going to do, in fact, if the MAGA Republicans, he gets elected, and the MAGA Republicans control the Congress, and they pass a universal ban on abortion, period, across the board at 6 weeks or 7 or 8 or 10 weeks, something very, very conservative. Is he going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security. President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch. Overwhelming border states and overburdening cities such as New York and Chicago, and in some cases causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, it made sure that we are in a situation where you had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. By the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. That's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now, all terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the Middle East, everywhere. All over the world, they're pouring in. And this guy just left it open. And he didn't need legislation because I didn't have legislation. I said, close the border. We had the safest border in history. In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. But look, we had the safest border in history.
Welcome,
now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it. And people are dying all over the place, including the people that are coming up in caravans.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
The only terrorist who's done anything crossing the border is one who came along and killed three, under his administration, killed an al-Qaeda person coming in his administration, killed 3 American soldiers, killed 3 American soldiers. That's the only terrorist that's there. I'm not saying that no terrorist ever got through, but the idea they're emptying their prisons, we're welcoming these people, that's simply not true. There's no data to support what he said. Once again, he's exaggerating.
I think Biden might have done well to just say that this is
President
an issue
Trump,
that a lot of people are worried about.
Immigration, you said that you're going to carry out, quote, the largest domestic deportation operation in American history, unquote. Does that mean that you will deport every undocumented immigrant in America, including those who have jobs, including those whose spouses are citizens, and including those who have lived here for decades? And if so, how will you do it?
Just 1 second. He said we killed 3 people. The people we killed are al-Baghdadi and Soleimani, the 2 greatest terrorists, biggest terrorists anywhere in the world. And it had a huge impact on everything, not just border, on everything. He's the one that killed people with the bad water, including hundreds of thousands of people dying, and also killing our citizens when they come in. We are living right now in a rat's nest. They're killing our people in New York, in California, in every state in the union, because we don't have borders anymore. Every state is now a border. And because of his ridiculous, insane, and very stupid policies, people are coming in and they're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen. We call it migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime. They're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen before. And you're reading it like these 3 incredible young girls over the last few days. One of them, I just spoke to the mother, and they just had the funeral for this girl, 12 years old. This is horrible what's taken place. What's taken place in our country, we're literally an uncivilized country now. He doesn't want it to be. He just doesn't know. He opened the borders. Nobody's ever seen anything like. And we have to get a lot of these people out, or we have to get them out fast, because they're going to destroy our country. Just take a look at where they're living. They're living in luxury hotels in New York City and other places. Our veterans are on the street. They're dying because he doesn't care about our veterans. He doesn't care. He doesn't like the military at all, and he doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody been worse. I had the highest approval rating for veterans taking care of the VA. He has the worst. He's gotten rid of all the things that I approved, choice that I got through Congress, all of the different things I approved, they abandoned. We had by far the highest, and now it's down in less than half because he's done all these great things that we did. And I think he did it just because I approved it, which is crazy. But he has killed so many people at our border by allowing all of these people to come in. And it's a very sad day in America.
President Biden, you have the mic.
Every single thing he said is a lie. Every single one. For example, veterans are a hell of a lot better off since I passed the PACT Act. 1 million of them now have insurance, and their families have it. Their families have it because what happened, whether it was Agent Orange or burn pits, they're all being covered now. And his group opposed that. We're also in a situation where we have great respect for veterans. My son spent a year in Iraq, living right next to one of those burn pits, came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. I was recently in France for D-Day, and I spoke all about those heroes that died. I went to the World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
President Trump?
First of all, that was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many of these magazines. He made that up. He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We had 19 people that said I didn't say it. And think of this. Who would say I'm at a cemetery or I'm talking about our veterans? Because nobody's taken better care. I'm so glad this came up, and he brought it up. There's nobody that's taken better care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would, in front of generals and others, say suckers and losers. We have 19 people that said it was never said by me. It was made up by him, just like Russia was made up, just like the 51 intelligence agents are made up, just like the new thing with the 16 economists are talking. It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son, Hunter. It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
4-star general standing to your side who was on your staff who said you said it, period. That's number one. And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. And they now are in their family. The only sacred obligation we have as a country is to care for our veterans when they come home and their families and equip them when they go to war. That's what we're doing. That's what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
All right, thank you so much.
Let's move to the topic of foreign policy.
I thought we might be taking a break.
I want to begin with Russia's war against Ukraine, which is now in its third year. Former President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all, our veterans and our soldiers can't stand this guy. They can't stand him. They think he's the worst commander-in-chief, if that's what you call him, that we've ever had. They can't stand him. So let's get that straight. And they like me more than just about any of them. And that's based on every single bit of information. As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, the president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead right now, much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was such a horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, that when Putin watched that and he saw the incompetence, that he should have fired those generals, like I fired the one that you mentioned, and so he's got no love lost, but he should have fired those generals. No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind, too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take this was his dream.
What do you think about this? Do you think Putin had any calculation on who was in the White House?
Ukraine, never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas. You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything. No money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
President Biden?
I've never heard so much malarkey in my whole life. Look, the fact of the matter is that we're in a situation where, let's take the last point first. Iran attacked American troops, caused brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it. Recently, when he was president, they attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. He didn't do a thing when the attack took place, number one. Number two, we got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number three, we found ourselves in a situation where, if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want, and do whatever you want.
He means Putin, doesn't he?
And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. And listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish. Kyiv, and he in fact didn't do it at all. He wasn't able to get it done, and they've lost thousands and thousands of troops. 500.
It's interesting with Biden because sometimes he
Trump,
talks in this circumlocutory fashion, which I think is in part to do with his stutter. So when he says, "Hey, in fact, there's a situation in which," I think some of that is his stutter-learned strategy.
No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it.
Where do you guys stand on this?
Every time that
do you think the West
Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled. People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled, and I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
President Biden, you have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, and by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much.
You think, yes, on the point of his being a stutter strategy.
That's why we're strong.
Ukraine should accept peace terms.
Thank you. Moving on to the Middle
Apparently
East.
Peace terms were on the table very early on, and one of the people that scuppered it was actually Boris Johnson, the then UK Prime Minister. I think they were quite far along in those, literally in the first weeks after the invasion.
Alive are 5 Americans. Israel's response has killed thousands of Palestinians and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. President Biden,
curious if you think Joe Biden's going to be able to do this for 4 years. I mean, that is a genuine question.
Conflict. But so far, Hamas has not released the remaining hostages, and Israel is continuing its military offensive in Gaza. So what additional leverage will you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one, everyone from the United Nations Security Council straight through to the G7 to the Israelis and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan I put forward. Which has 3 stages to it. The first stage is trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas, number one. They're the only ones standing out. We're still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime, what's happened? In Israel, we're finding that the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world. And so there are 2 different things. Hamas cannot be allowed to be continued. We continue to send our experts and our intelligence people as to how they can get Hamas like we did bin Laden. You don't have to do it. And by the way, they've been greatly weakened, Hamas, and they should be. They should be eliminated.
That's an interesting parallel, Hamas and bin Laden, because bin Laden, that took 10 years.
Centers.
I think most people want this to end promptly, if not
Just going
yesterday.
Back to Ukraine for 1 second. We have an ocean separating us. The European nations together have spent $100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. The Secretary General
that
of
sounds
NATO
like a
said
Trump
did the most incredible job I've ever seen.
Jens Stoltenberg quote.
They wouldn't have any. They were going out of business. We were spending almost 100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting all. You got to ask these people to put up the money. We're over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one who wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
Curious line of inquiry.
President Biden, you have a minute.
I've never heard so much foolishness. This is a guy who wants to get out.
By the way,
of
what do you
NATO.
guys generally feel about the level of funding for these war efforts at the moment versus the cost of living for people here in America?
It may be a big ocean, but are we ever able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe? What happens if, in fact, you have Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland and other places. See what happens then. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And by the way, I got 50 other nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this kind of dislocation has a serious threat to the whole world peace.
Actually, do you think this is one of Biden's strengths, is working with people, building alliance, bringing people with him and partners? I don't know how much it sells to the electorate,
would you support the creation of an independent
it.
Palestinian state in order to achieve peace in the region?
I'd have to see, but before we do that, the problem we have is that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I made great trade deals with the European nations because if you add them up, they're about the same size economically. Their economy is about the same size as the United States. And they were no cars, they don't want anything that we have. But we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that. But
I'm curious where word retrieval meets stuttering.
And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, and he's right about this, I said, no, I'm not going to support NATO if you don't pay. They asked me that question, would you guard us against Russia? At a very secret meeting of the 28 states at that time, nations at that time. And I said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in the next day and the next month.
What do you think is Putin's intention? Do you think it's realistic, this idea that he would go after Poland? Putin's also been around for a long time on the global stage.
I want to ask you about
previously
January
he wasn't looking to do that, it seems. So I'm wondering how much that's actually
some of them stormed the
rhetoric
Capitol
versus
to stop
reality.
the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes. As president, you swore an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote, the Constitution. What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction on January 6th and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I don't think too many believe that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people. What happened to the United States' reputation under this man's leadership is horrible, including weaponization, which I'm sure at some point you'll be talking about.
This is an interesting question, because I think America's reputation around the world depends what your political colors are. Because I remember when we had George Bush and people were pretending that they weren't American, they were pretending that they were Canadian.
For your actions and inaction on January 6, 2021, and worry that you'll do it again.
Well, I didn't say that to anybody. I said peacefully and patriotically. And Nancy Pelosi, if you just watched the news from 2 days ago, on tape to her daughter, who's a documentary filmmaker, they say, but she's saying, oh, no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this. Because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. And the mayor of, in writing, by the way, the mayor, in writing, turned it down, the mayor of D.C. They turned it down. I offered 10,000 because I could see, I had virtually nothing to do. They asked me to go make a speech. I could see what was happening. Everybody was saying they're going to be there on January 6th. They're going to be there. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of people coming. You could feel it. You could feel it, too, and you could feel it. And I said, they ought to have some National Guard or whatever. And I offered it to her. And she now admits that she turned it down. And it was the same day she was, I don't know, she can't be very happy with her daughter because it made her into a liar. She said, I take full responsibility for January 6th.
President Biden?
Look,
Chaddy's good.
He encouraged those folks to go up on Capitol Hill, number one. I sat in the dining room off the Oval Office. He sat there for 3 hours. 3 hours watching, begging, being begged by his vice president and a number of his colleagues on the Republican side as well to do something, to call for a stop, to end it. Instead, they talked about these people being patriots and great patrons of America. In fact, he says he'll now forgive them for what they've done.
What do you guys think about that?
They've been convicted.
Do you think that's an overstep of presidential power? And I know that it is a constitutional thing. And something about that, to my British sensibilities, always seems strange.
Scores of cases, including the Supreme Court, and they said, no, this guy is responsible for doing what was done. He did do a damn thing, and these people should be in jail, and they should be the ones who are being held accountable. And he wants to let them all out. And now he says if he loses again, such a whiner that he is, that it could be a bloodbath.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
What they've done to some people that are so innocent, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. What you have done, how you've destroyed the lives of so many people. When they ripped down Portland, when they ripped down many other cities, you go to Minnesota, Minneapolis, what they've done there with the fires all over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of they took over big chunks of Seattle. I was all set to bring in the National Guard.
What do you guys think about that?
They heard that. They saw them coming and they left immediately.
Semi-autonomous zone.
What he said about
several
this
precincts
whole subject
in Seattle.
is so off. Peacefully patriotic. One other thing. The Unselect Committee, which is basically two horrible Republicans that are all gone now, out of office, and Democrats, all Democrats, they destroyed and deleted all of the information they found because they found out we were right. We were right. And they deleted and destroyed all of the information. They should go to jail for that. If a Republican did that, they'd go to jail.
Thank you, President.
There you go.
President Biden, I want to give you a minute.
The only
surprised you didn't get that in earlier.
A convicted felon is the man I'm looking at right now. And the fact of the matter is, what he's telling you is simply not true. The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up in Capitol Hill. And all those people, every one of those who were convicted, deserves to be convicted. The idea that they didn't kill somebody, just went in and broke down doors, broke the windows, occupied offices, turned over desks, turned them over statues. The idea that those people are patriots? Come on. When I asked him the first two debates we had, first time around, I said, will you denounce the Proud Boys? He said, no, I'll tell them to stand by.
Stand back and stand by, wasn't that the expression?
Will you denounce these guys? Will you denounce the people we're talking about?
I think most
now?
of those leaders of the Proud Boys are doing significant jail time.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to give you a minute, President Trump, for a follow-up question I have. After a jury convicted you of 34 felonies last month, you said if reelected, you would, quote, have every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th going to jail. Your main political opponent is standing on stage with you tonight. Can you clarify exactly what it means about you feeling you have every right to go after your political opponents?
Well, I said my retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again, because right now it's a failing nation. My retribution is going to be success. But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably numerous other times. Should have been convicted before, but his Justice Department let the statute of limitations lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done. He's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion or you change the prosecutor. Otherwise, you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo. That we're not going to do anything. We're not going to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor having to do with his son. This man is a criminal. This man, you're lucky. You're lucky.
So what is your guys' sense of this, right? Because this is a common Republican talking point that this is basically politically motivated against Trump.
Biden, you have said,
and I'm curious if you think that liberal DAs have in some ways,
I'll give you a minute to respond.
because of their view of Trump being more keen to prosecute him, even if there is data to support these prosecutions.
Outrageous. It's simply a lie, number one. Number two, the idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong.
That's a good Trump
simply
face.
wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history has spoken like that before. Number three, the crimes that you are still charged with, and think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having sex with a porn star on the night while your wife was pregnant? I mean, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
Give you a minute, sir.
I didn't have sex with a porn star, number one. Number two, that was a case that was started and moved. They moved a high-ranking official, a DOJ, into the Manhattan DA's office to start that case. That case is going to be appealed and won. We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat. The prosecutor were all high-ranking Democrats, appointed people, and both the civil and the criminal. He basically went after his political opponent because he thought it was going to damage me. But when the public found out about these cases, because they understand it better than he does, he has no idea what these cases are. But when they found out about these cases, you know what they did? My poll numbers went up, way up. You know that because you're reporting it.
It's incredible.
And we took in more money in the last 2 weeks than we've ever taken in the history of any campaign. I don't think any campaign has ever taken. Hundreds of millions of dollars came pouring in because the public knows it's a scam, and it's a guy that's after his political opponent because he can't win fair and square.
Thank you, President Trump. President
that's
Biden,
interesting.
you
think
have
judges
said,
here are
quote,
under
Donald
regulatory
Trump
capture
and his
by the
MAGA
extreme left.
Republicans are
Say more about
determined to
that.
destroy American democracy. Do you believe that the tens of millions of Americans who are likely to vote for President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know about what he's done, yes. The more they know about what he's done. And there's a lot more coming. He's got a lot of cases down the road coming around. He's got a whole range of issues he has to face. I don't know what the juries will do, but I do know he has a real problem. And so the fact that, could you ever think you heard any president say that I'm going to seek retribution? Do you ever hear any president say that I thought Hitler had some good ideas? What got me involved to run in the first place after my son had died, I decided in Iraq, because of Iraq, I said I wasn't going to run again. Until I saw what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. People coming out of the woods carrying swastikas on torches, and singing the same anti-Semitic bile they sang back in Germany. And the young woman got killed. I spoke to the mother, and they asked him. They said, "What do you think of those people? The ones who got killed, the one who tried to stop it, and the ones he said, I think they're fine people on both sides." What American president would ever say Nazis coming out of fields carrying torches, singing the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying swastikas were fine people? And this is a guy who says Hitler's done some good things. I'd like to know what they are.
What do you guys think about that? Do you think that fascists and anti-fascists are engaged in similar tactics and levels of violence, or do you think there's a big difference?
President Trump.
Jake, both of you know that story has been totally wiped out, because when you see the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on this. So he just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. He's not equipped to be president. You know it, and I know it. It's ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency, he's without question the worst president, the worst presidency in the history of our country. We shouldn't be having a debate about it. There's nothing to debate. He made up the Charlottesville story, and you'll see it's debunked all over the place. Every anchor every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day, it came out where it was fully debunked.
Oh, I see what he's saying. I thought he was saying that the woman didn't die, because that obviously did happen.
And he didn't run because of Charlottesville. He used that as an excuse to run.
President Biden.
And debunked. It happened. All you have to do is listen to what was said at the time. And the idea that somehow that's the only reason I ran. I ran because I was worried a guy like this guy could get elected. If he thought they were good people coming out of that forest, carrying those woods, carrying those torches, then he didn't deserve to be president. Didn't deserve to be president at all. And the idea that he's talking about all this being fabricated, we saw with our own eyes. We saw what happened on January 6th. We saw the people breaking through the windows. We saw people occupying his own vice president. Look, there's a reason why 40 of his 44 top cabinet officers.
Who's going to be Trump's VP pick? Do you have any ideas on that?
Hasn't endorsed him this time. So why?
Or who would you like it to be?
They know him well. They serve with him. Why are they not endorsing him?
Thank you, President Biden. We're going to be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate.
If you just tuned in, we've been here for about an hour at this point. So actually, I thought they were taking 2 breaks within 90 minutes. So I'm curious. This one seems, we've gone for 50 minutes here, so I'm not quite understanding the break strategy. What are you making of it? How are people doing? How are you finding this? Are you entertained? Is there anything that's surprising you? Who do you think's doing better?
Coming up, our series.
I would say
Tom, is that you working the camera?
my personal sense is that Trump is seeming more coherent. I'm a little worried that Joe Biden's not landing too much with people. It's not completely obvious what his points are.
I had progressively fallen deeper.
Dealing with a monster, make sure that you yourself don't become a monster. That's what I think about extreme tactics.
The risk is the rush. What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think some people felt that's the risk that's happening right now in Gaza as well.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I use sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left.
It's interesting to me that there's
purpose of the industry is to get you to play
there's such a difference in people's perceptions that they're looking at the same thing and seeing such different things. So, for instance, I know on the right, people feel really clear that this is election interference and that this is Biden or the Biden administration trying to get their political opponent locked up, right? That a lot of the prosecutions are politically motivated. And on the left, people actually think that one of the strengths of Biden is that he's been hands-off documentary from and that he's actually upholding the rule of law and the integrity of separation of powers. And so it seems very surprising to them that he's getting this leveled at him when he's clearly not involved, and that he's even said that should his own son get jail time, which I'm thinking is likely it's just a question of how much, that he's not going to do something to commute the sentence. I mean, the only curiosity I have about that is if Biden loses the election and he's a few days before the end of his office and he's not got a political career to continue, whether he might think differently about that. But I think in his sensibilities, he's not someone that wants to tip the scales in that way. But I'm curious what you think and make of it.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
I think if Biden were born in a different era where people are more comfortable with accepting some of
Disability
their
activists have since torn down
limitations
barriers
or
blocking
less
them from
abled
living
ways.
at home or in
I
the
think he might
community.
have dealt with his stutter differently. He might have been more vocal about it. I think he's seen it as something private that he's overcome.
But of the
it's rare that he talks about it, and I actually think it influences how he speaks more than most people might understand, or I'm curious to the extent to which it influences how he speaks. Obviously, there's probably age-related cognitive decline and other things there, but I think it's part of it. There's a way that he speaks where he uses sentences where I think he's going to stutter, so he says, what we found, in fact, folks, is, well, there's a situation in which, and it kind of has him go around the houses, and maybe that's actually an elegant solution. I don't know what it's like to have a stutter. And so none of that's critical. It's just, I wonder if he has an impact that's different than it may be if he spoke more clearly about what he's suffering with. Seems allowed. I'm a little concerned. It's been a while since I've seen him. I guess any of us have seen him sort of at length. I'm a little concerned. You know, we're 4.5 years from the end, more than 4.5 years from the end of the next president's term. I'm a little concerned about him from that regard. And I don't know that it's a fair electoral strategy to run for office and imagine that you can't complete a term. So I'm curious how this is playing to people. I'm curious how it's playing to a base. I know some people are so never Trumper that for them that's a minor detail or something that they're not super concerned about. I'm a little concerned about it.
And Black Americans
even
are
just how
imprisoned
his
at 5
posture
times the
is
rate
when he's
of white
listening.
Americans.
His kind of resting posture, he seems very
who are disappointed that you
kind of
haven't
tired
made
and
more progress?
caved in on himself.
He acknowledged he made a lot of progress, number one.
Let's turn the volume up
here.
here.
There's more small black businesses that have been started than any time in history. Number two, the wages of black unemployment is the lowest level it's been in a long, long time. Number three, we're trying to provide housing for Black Americans and dealing with the segregation that exists among these corporations that collude to keep people out of their houses. And in addition to that, we find that the impact on the choice that Black families have to make relative to child care is incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation in the past, I was able to reduce Black child care costs. I cut them in half. We got to make sure we provide for child care costs. We got to make sure, because when you provide those child care protections, you increase economic growth because more people can be in the job market. So there's more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting up, and they know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to Black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any Black family, first-time home buyer, should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home so they can get started. I made sure that we're in a situation where all those Black families and those Black individuals who had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged in nursing, anything having to do with volunteerism, if they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest is forgiven after 10 years. Millions have benefited from that. And we're going to do a whole lot more for Black families.
Thank you, President Trump.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation, and he's right, it's been very bad. He caused the inflation, and it's killing Black families and Hispanic families and just about everybody. It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food where it's doubled and tripled and quadrupled. They can't live. They're not living anymore. He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect. It was so good. All he had to do is leave it alone. He destroyed it with his Green New scam and all this money that's being thrown out the window. He caused inflation. As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the Black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking Black jobs now. And it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking black jobs and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet. On the left
but
you're going to see something that's going to be
Trump is funnier than people on the left give him credit for, even if he's
President
also
Biden?
mean and bullying, and it's not befitting of a president. Things like Green New Scam or the Biden. What do you say earlier? The Biden migrant crime.
The economy. Absolutely decimated the economy.
Make of it what you will, but he's got a turn of phrase.
There were no jobs. We provided thousands of millions of jobs for individuals who are in all communities, including minority communities. We made sure that they have health insurance. We have covered, if the ACA has increased, I made sure that they're $8,000 per person in a family to get written off for health care. But this guy wants to eliminate that. They tried 50 times. He wants to get rid of the ACA again, and they're going to try again if they win. You find ourselves in a position where the idea that we're not doing anything, we put more police on the street than any administration has. He wants to cut the cops. We're providing for equity and making sure people have a shot to make it. There's a lot going on, but in inflation, he caused it by his tremendous malfeasance in the way he handled the pandemic.
Thank you. Another persistent challenge is the climate crisis. 2023 was the hottest year in recorded history, and communities across the country are confronting the devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes, and rising sea levels. Former President Trump, you've vowed to end your opponent's climate initiatives, but will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Well, let me just go back to what he said about the police, how close the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state
I love the way that he uses his middle initial when he talks about himself.
Trump. Almost every police group. And what he's done to the black population is horrible, including the fact that for 10 years he called them super predators. We can't, in the 1990s, we can't forget that. Super predators was his name, and he called it to them for 10, and they've taken great offense at it, and now they see it happening.
But
when they see what I did for criminal justice reform and for the historically black colleges and universities, where I funded them and got them all funded, and the opportunity zones with Tim, as you know, Tim Scott was incredible. He did a great job, great senator from South Carolina. He came to me with the idea, and it was a great idea. It's one of the most successful economic development acts ever in the country, opportunity zones. And the biggest beneficiary are blacks. And that's why we have the best numbers with them in maybe ever. They're saying ever. I read this morning where ever, the best numbers. He's lost much of the black population because he's done a horrible job for black people. He's also done a horrible job for Hispanics. But wait till you see these millions of people pouring into our country, and they're going to take the jobs.
I don't know if that's a Biden thing so much as
haven't seen anything
I think
yet.
there's
it's
an
a disaster.
education difference between the average Democrat operator and some of their traditional constituencies, and they're in different value systems.
To slow the climate crisis.
So I want absolutely immaculate clean water, and I want absolutely clean air.
Good.
And we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever, and we were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever. And my top environmental people gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage, actually.
I don't know where the hell he's been. The idea that anything he said is true. I've passed the most extensive climate change legislation in history. We find ourselves, and by the way, black colleges. I came up with $15 billion for HBCUs, historic black universities and colleges, because they don't have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any black student is capable in college of doing any white student can do. They just don't have the money, but now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech. We're in a situation where the idea that he is claiming to have done something that had the cleanest water, he hadn't done a damn thing for the environment.
I do think that's something internationally that is popular, being back in the climate accords.
If we reach 1.5 degrees Celsius at any one point, where there's no way back. The only existential threat to humanity is climate change, and he didn't do a damn thing about it. He wants to undo all that I've done.
The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing.
China's interesting in this because they get classified as a lower income country than they probably are now.
I didn't want to waste that money because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones who was costing us money. Nobody else was paying into it, and it was a disaster. But everything that he said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs because the migrants coming in, they want everybody. And look, I have the biggest heart on the stage, I guarantee you that. And I want to take care of people. But we're destroying our country. They're taking over our schools, our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security.
Every Western country is going to have to figure out Social Security because we've got an issue around worker to retiree ratios.
The idea is that we, in fact, we were the only ones of consequence who were not members of the Paris Accord. How can we do anything if we're not able to? The United States can't get its pollution under control. One of the largest polluters in the world, number one. We're making significant progress. By 2035, we will have cut pollution in half. We have made significant progress, and we're continuing to make progress.
I think that's kind of a cool idea. I don't quite know how much funding goes into that.
We'll learn how to deal with it, just like the Peace Corps. And we're moving in directions that are going to significantly change the elements of cause of pollution. But the idea that he claims that he has the biggest heart up here and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way, with regard to prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one, voluntarily. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company...
They really are just cutting the mic.
And by the way...
So every day, millions of Americans struggle just to make ends meet. For many older Americans, Social Security provides a critical lifeline. President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social Security solvent?
Yes, make the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Right now, everybody making under $170,000 pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time the first one they get when they're 18 years old. The idea that they're going to, I'm proposing that everybody, the millionaires pay 1%. 1%. So no one I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000. After that, I began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond to be able to guarantee the program for life.
So you still have 82 seconds left. Are there any other measures that
it's not a great sign when you're not taking the time
to keep Social Security solvent, or is that one enough?
Well, no, that one enough will keep it solvent. But the biggest thing I'll do if we defeat this man, because he wants to get rid of Social Security. He thinks there's plenty to cut in Social Security. He's wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare, both times. And and if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that I believe supports, is in fact want to cut it as well. The idea that we don't need to protect our seniors is ridiculous. And by the way, the American public has greater health care coverage today than ever before. And on the ACA, as I said, you're in a circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people would not have insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Only thing that allows them to have that insurance.
I think that's one of the great things about the Affordable Care Act.
They, in fact, are part of the ACA. And by the way, the other thing is, we're in a situation where we talk about education for black communities. I've raised
Blue Rain. What tax ranges
are you
talking about? Is this in the U.S.? Are you talking?
Anybody making under $70,000 a year is going to be able to get $15,000 toward their tuition. He just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
So I've dealt with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation for the last 8 years.
It's so interesting, this kind of like mutual projection, right? Trump, who's been fact-checked probably more than anyone, is kind of accusing this guy of lying. Biden's accusing him of lying. This is a weird kind of double-speak reality we live in.
Russia, Ukraine. Everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation. The losers and suckers story that he made up is a total lie on the military. It's a disgrace. But Social Security, He's destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country, and they're putting them onto Social Security. They're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid. They're putting them in our hospitals. They're taking the place of our citizens. What they're doing to the VA, to our veterans, is unbelievable. Our veterans are living in the street.
I don't know what the answers to veteran homelessness are, but that does make me sad.
He doesn't know what he's doing, and it's really coming back. I've never seen such anger in our country before.
President Biden?
The idea that veterans are not being taken care of, I told you before. And by the way, when I said suckers and losers, he acknowledged after that he fired that general. That general got fired because he's the one that acknowledged that that's what he said. He was the one standing with Trump when he said it, number one. Number
I think he needs
two,
to learn how to not say that.
The
idea that we're going to be in a situation
the idea that we're going to be in a situation
all
where
these millions and millions, the way he talks about it, illegal aliens are coming into the country and taking away our jobs. There's a reason why we have the fastest growing economy in the world, the reason why we have the most successful economy in the world. We're doing better than any other nation in the world. And by the way, those 15 Nobel laureates he talked about being phony, those 15 Nobel laureates, economists, they all said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession and inflation is going to increasingly go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159.
So interestingly, about 20 years ago, the Eurozone and the U.S. economy were doing about the same, and now the U.S. economy is about double the output of
which many
the Eurozone.
Struggle to afford. President
So the American
Trump,
economy has been booming the last. This is not like a comment on presidential administrations. Just over the long haul, the American economy has been doing pretty well.
Child for many families, the cost of child care for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make child care more affordable?
Just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made
New Zealand.
it up. But
okay,
we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very highly respected, much more so than him. The other thing is, he doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good.
So on a point of information, it's actually not a swamp here. It's a tidal basin, apparently.
But they were no good. I inherited these people. I didn't put them there. I didn't put Comey there. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show. The most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now all of a sudden he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. And I don't think we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut.
So this is a talking point on the right that illegal immigrants are brought in knowingly to increase the Democrat voter base.
Thank you, President.
I don't think there's a lot of evidence to show that that's true. I don't think there is evidence for that.
The United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. We have the finest military in the history of the world, the finest in the history of the world. No one thinks we're weak. No one wants to screw around with us. Nobody, number one. Number two, the idea that we're talking about worst presidents. I wasn't joking. Look it up or go online. 159 or 58, don't hold me the exact number, presidential historians, they've had meetings and they voted who's the worst president in American history. One through best to worst. They said he was the worst in all of American history. That's a fact. That's not conjecture. He can argue they're wrong, but that's what they voted. The idea that he is doing anything to deal with child care, he did virtually nothing to child care. We should significantly increase the child care tax credit. We should significantly increase the availability of women and men single parents to be able to go back to work, and we should encourage businesses to have.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, the question was about what would you do to make child care more affordable, if you want to take your minute.
Just so you understand, we have polling, we have other things that they rate him the worst because what he's done is so bad. And they rate me, I'll show you, I will show you, and they rate me one of the best, okay? And if I'm given another 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the best. Nobody's ever
Biden's got to be careful with the last. That didn't go well for Hillary.
Nobody ever cut taxes like us. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump tax cuts to expire. So everybody, including the two of you, are going to pay 4 to 5 times. Nobody ever heard of this before. All my life, I'd grow up and I'd see politicians talking about cutting taxes. When we cut taxes, as I said, we did more business. Apple and all these companies, they were bringing money back into our country. The worst president in history by far, and everybody knows it.
President Biden?
Look, the fact of the matter is that he's dead wrong about, he's increased the tariff, he will increase the taxes on middle-class people. I said I'd never raise a tax on anybody making less than $400,000. I didn't. But this tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming into the country, you know what the economists say? That's going to cost the average American $2,500 a year more because they're going to have to pay the difference in food and all the things that are very important. Number two, he's in a situation where he talks about how he has not raised, he's somehow helped the middle class. The middle class have been devastated by you. Now you want a new tax cut of $5 trillion over the next 10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You had the largest deficit of any president in American history, number one. Number two, you have not, in fact, made any contact, any progress with China. We are at the lowest trade deficit with China.
What do you guys think about the deficit? Do you think this needs to get handled?
Thank you, President Biden.
This is leaving a problem to future generations.
Millions of Americans. Both
a lot of economists say that it's actually
first term. The
it's effectively
crisis. And for both of you,
within the borrowing power of a country like the US, it's not so much of a problem. But there's something about the mindset that I know a lot of people, particularly on the right, aren't happy with.
Former President Trump,
we just keep borrowing.
Despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now in the throes of addiction who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
To finish up, we now have the largest deficit in the history of our country under this guy. We have the largest deficit with China. He gets paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate. He gets money from China. So I think he's afraid to deal with them or something. But do you notice he never took out my tariffs because we bring in so much money with the tariffs that I imposed on China. He never took them away. He can't because it's too much money. It's tremendous. And we saved our steel industries, and there was more to come, but he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because he can't, because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country, and he's got the worst situation with China. China's going to own us if you keep allowing them to do what they're doing to us as a country. They are killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our country.
So, President Trump, you have 67 seconds left. The question was, what are you going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Jake, we were doing very well at addiction until the COVID came along. We had the 2.5, almost 3 years of like nobody's ever had before, any country, in every way. And then we had to get tough. And it was the drugs pouring across the border it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen, the way they can spot it. We did a lot, and we were getting very low numbers, very, very low numbers. Then he came along. The numbers, have you seen the numbers now? It's not only the 18 million people that I believe is even low because the gotaways, they don't even talk about gotaways. But the numbers of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women coming across our border, the worst thing I've ever seen, at numbers that nobody's ever seen under him because the border's so bad. But the number of
that wasn't really an
drugs
answer to
coming
that
across
question.
our border now is the largest we've ever had by far.
President Trump, thank you. President Biden?
Fentanyl and the byproducts of fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl, these big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it costs a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together, this bipartisan deal. More fentanyl machines, more be able to detect drugs, more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleagues and said, don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically. No, he never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those machines. We need those machines. And we're coming down very hard in every country in Asia in terms of precursors for fentanyl. And Mexico is working with us to make sure they don't have the technology to be able to put it
That
together.
doesn't give me a lot of hope that either these guys are going to be able to solve the opioid epidemic.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, and again, the question is about Americans in the throes of addiction right now, struggling to get the treatment they need.
Well, this does pertain to it. He ended Remain in Mexico. He ended catch and release. I made it catch and release in Mexico, not catch and release here. We had so many things that we had done, hard negotiations with Mexico, and I got it all for nothing. It's just like when you have a hostage. We always pay $6 billion for a hostage. Every time we say it's a hostage. Now we have a hostage, a Wall Street Journal reporter, I think a good guy, and he's over there because Putin is laughing at this guy, probably asking for billions of dollars for the reporter. I will have him out very quickly as soon as I take office. Before I take office, I said by literally as soon as I win the election, I will have that reporter out. He should have had him out a long time ago, but Putin's probably asking for billions and billions of dollars because this guy pays it every time. We had 2 cases where we paid $6 billion for 5 people. I got 58 people out, and I paid essentially nothing.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
Let's turn to concerns that voters have about each of you. President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your second term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized being the youngest person.
I think he was elected in
politics.
the year I was
second
born,
youngest
1983.
person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 50 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, more investment in America, over billions of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought an awful lot of people. The whole idea of computer chips, we used to have 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because he was sending people to find the cheapest jobs overseas and to bring home a product. So I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here in the United States. And guess what? Those fabs, they call them, to build these chips, those fabs pay over $100,000. You don't need a college degree for them. And there's billions, about $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs.
Americans from all over the world.
From all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. The idea that somehow we are this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before. We're the envy of the world. Name me a single major country president who wouldn't trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us, all of our allies, and those who he coddles up to, from Kim Jong-un, we sent love letters to, and Putin, etc.
We shouldn't be laughing about these things,
they don't want
but
to screw around with us.
Donald Trump actually writing a love letter to Putin.
Former President Trump, to follow up, you would be 82 at the end of your second term. What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests.
What do you think about this? Should there be a mandatory cognitive test, not actually age-specific? This was Haley's claim that basically any presidential candidate should take a cognitive test.
But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year. And, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way, and I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter, but I'm in as good a shape as I was years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced them. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor. And then I took another
whatever you think of Trump's policies and ideas, he does tonight seem like he's got another 4 years in him in terms of energy. That's how he's occurring to me.
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 35 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, that's what you're. Anyway, just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him.
Oh wow,
I got my
that's pretty legit.
Which when I was vice
These guys are playing too much golf with the lobbyists. That's the problem, right?
And by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf with you if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie. He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
This is a weird line of inquiry. I'm not sure this is relevant to the job. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm underestimating how much presidential business happens on the golf course.
Let's not act like children.
To a specific concern that voters have about you. Will you pledge tonight that once all legal challenges have been exhausted, that you will accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins, and you will say right now that political violence in any form is unacceptable?
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's totally unacceptable. And if you would see my statements that I made on Twitter at the time, and also my statement that I made in the Rose Garden, you would say it's one of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to, and I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol, and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and clear. But the answer is, if the election is fair, free, and I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something. I wish he was a great president, because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be at one of my many places enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment because I wouldn't have been his political opponent, because he indicted me because I was his opponent. I wish he was a great president. I would rather have that. I wouldn't be here. I don't mind being here. But the only reason I'm here is he's so bad as a president that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again. We're a failing nation right now. We're a seriously failing nation. And we're a failing nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His military policies are insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin, they don't respect him. They don't fear him. They have nothing going with this gentleman, and he's going to drive us into World War III.
You want a World War III, let him follow and win, and let Putin say, do what you want, NATO. Just do what you want. There's a thing called Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all, and required response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with the job I've done and what they've done. Because we are a powerful nation. We have wonderful people. It's because of the people, not me. It's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. And again, you want to have a war, just let Putin go ahead and take Kyiv, make sure they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary, and other places along that border. Then you have a war.
President Trump, as I come back to you for a follow-up, the question was, will you accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
Just to finish what he said, if I might, Russia, they took a lot of land from Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. Mm-hmm. They took no land, nothing from Trump, nothing. He knew not to do it. He's not going to play games with me. He knew that. I got along with him very well, but he knew not to play games. He took nothing from me. But now he's going to take the whole thing from this man right here. That's a war that should have never started. It would have never started, ever, with me. and he's going to take Ukraine. And, you know, you asked me a question before, would you do this? He's got us in such a bad position right now with Ukraine and Russia, because Ukraine's not winning that war. He said, I will never settle until such time. They're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers. They've lost so many people. It's so sad. They've lost so many people, and they've lost those gorgeous cities with the golden domes that are 1,000 years old.
What do you think about the negotiation of saying Ukraine won't ever join NATO and actually giving that piece to Russia?
Of the election,
not the land, giving them the agreement.
No,
if it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I would have much rather accepted these. But the fraud and everything else was ridiculous. And if you want, we'll have a news conference on it in a week, or we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely, there's nothing I'd rather do. It would be much easier for me to do that than I'm running again. I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did. He's destroying our country. I would be very happy to be someplace else, in a nice location someplace. And again, no indictments, no political opponent stuff, because it's the only way he thinks he can win. But unfortunately, it's driven up my numbers and driven them up to a very high level because the people understand it.
Well, let's see what your numbers are when this election is over. Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost the first time, you continued, you appealed and appealed to courts all across the country. Not one single court in America said any of your claims had any merit. State or local, none. But you continue to provoke this lie about somehow there's all this misrepresentation, all this stealing. There is no evidence of that at all.
I wonder how that's landing with Trump. It's kind of interesting he keeps hammering on that point.
You're such a whiner. The idea, if you lose again, you accepting anything, you can't stand the loss. Something snapped in you when you lost.
Break number 2. So what time are we going to here?
We'll be right back.
It's getting late. I shouldn't complain. I guess it's already late for those of you that are tuning in from the UK or Europe. But gosh, feeling a little tired here. So what are you making of this? Let's hit up the comments. How's it going? Who's winning? Is anyone doing worse or better than you thought? What issues matter most to you? I'm a little concerned that Biden's not really connecting on any particular issues. Like if I said to you, what has Biden really made a point of so far? Would it be obvious to you? It doesn't feel quite so obvious to me.
To ask the question that you're asking.
What do you think about America being the global peace question? Is that still the role that America ought to play, either morally or otherwise? So I'm wondering if we really want to avoid World War III. If we do well to think about what global security arrangements might deliver that. I do think it's good that NATO has prompted this consciousness about spending more money on defense. You know, even though it wouldn't be great if we lived in a world where overall we were spending less money on defense and putting more money into, you know, education and people's well-being and prosperity. But I don't think we yet live in that world. I am a little concerned as I look at this. I'm imagining if you have Putin and you're looking at Biden, that you probably imagine you could give him a bit of a runaround.
Why are there so many people feeling?
To be fair to Biden, though, he has always been quite strong on calling Putin out as a bully and a dictator.
A hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the
Curious
most
what you're making of that.
releases of a mixture of some of the most
April,
toxic
the debate was a
chemicals
wash from the
that
beginning.
we've seen in America.
How do you mean a wash
I feel like
out?
now I have a duty to
your
warn
perspective
other
is.
communities. If my
And
daughter has
we
to
have a few more
watch me
people
die
joining
of
us.
cancer,
Thanks for
at
joining
least
us.
it saves
We're going to be here through to the end. This is break 2. It's the final break of this first presidential debate. I guess it's running for 90 minutes.
But it's not fiction. It's
excluding the
48
break.
hours.
So I don't think we've got too much longer to go.
Four families shattered. There's no physical evidence. The mystery would haunt investigators.
Is it better if I do this? I'm not sure if the volume control here is controlling me or if it's controlling the. I can't actually hear the output sound here.
48 hours.
So let me know if that makes it any better if I turn the volume down.
Stories that inform. Or you can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire. How do we unlock the power within ourselves?
I guess if I do this, it completely cuts that sound out.
Like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I think I asked direct questions. I don't know that they're tough questions per se. Why aren't you holding yourself to that standard? It doesn't look like Congress is doing anything. What has to happen? That's the role of Face the Nation, to focus on the issues at hand, and that means a civil conversation with perspective.
It is now time for the candidates to deliver their closing statements as predetermined by a coin toss. We're going to begin with you, President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
We've made significant progress from the debacle that was left by President Trump in his last term. We found ourselves in a situation where, number one, we have to make sure that we have a fair tax system. I ask anyone out there in the audience, or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair? The fact is that I said nobody even making under $400,000 had a single penny increase in their taxes, and will not. And if I'm reelected, that'll be the case again. But this guy has increased your taxes because of the deficit, number one. He's increased inflation because of the debacle he left after the way he handled the pandemic. And he finds himself in a position where he now wants to tax you more by putting a 10% tariff on everything that comes into the United States of America. What I did, for example, he wants to get rid of the ability of Medicare us to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies. Well, guess what? We got it down to $35 for insulin instead of $400. No more than $2,000 for every senior, no matter how much prescription they need. You know what that did? That reduced the federal debt by $160 billion over 10 years because the government doesn't have to pay the exorbitant prices. I'm going to make that available to every senior all along. It's happening now, and everybody in America. He wants to get rid of that. I'm going to make sure that we have child care. We're going to significantly increase the credits people have for child care. I'm going to make sure we do something about what we're doing on lead pipes and all the things that are causing health problems for people across the country. We're going to continue to fight to bring down inflation and give people a break.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Like so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to get rid of this tax, that tax. But he doesn't do anything. All he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions of people to pour in. Our military doesn't respect him. We look like fools in Afghanistan. We didn't stop Israel. It was such a horrible thing that would have never happened. It should have never happened. Iran was broke. Anybody that did business with Iran, including China, they couldn't do business with the United States. They all passed. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, for terror, no money whatsoever. Again, Ukraine should have never happened. He talks about all this stuff, but he didn't do it. For 3.5 years, we're living in hell. We have the Palestinians and we have everybody else rioting all over the place. You talk about Charlottesville. This is 100 times Charlottesville, 1,000 times. The whole country is exploding because of you, because they don't respect you, and they have to respect their president, and they don't respect you throughout the world. What we did was incredible. We rebuilt the military. We got the largest tax cut in history, the largest regulation cut in history. The reason he's got jobs is because I cut the regulations that gave jobs, but he's putting a lot of those regulations back on. All of the things that we've done, nobody's never seen anything like. Even from a medical standpoint, right to try, where we can try space-age materials instead of going to Asia or going to Europe and trying to get when you're terminally ill. Now you can go and you can get something. You sign a document. They've been trying to get it for 42 years. But you know what we did for the military was incredible. Choice for our soldiers, where our soldiers, instead of waiting for 3 months to see a doctor, can go out and get themselves fixed up and readied up and take care of themselves, and they're living. And that's why I had the highest approval rating in the history of the VA. So all of these things, we're in a failing nation, but it's not going to be failing anymore. We're going to make it great again.
Thank you, former President Trump, President Biden. Stay with us because we have full analysis of this debate.
That's a wrap. Thanks, folks. I might hang around for a little bit of this debate, but I'm honestly starting to feel a bit tired. I'd love to know how you found that. I wasn't overall net super inspired. Happy to be here with you. Thanks for sharing this time with me. I'm curious what you think. My gut is that this has been worse for Biden and a bit better for Trump. That's what I'm sensing. Are you on that page as well? I just don't think there was much that Biden said that really landed. Unfortunately, between his way of speaking and his cadence, it's not that easy to ground. What is he actually saying right now? And I actually don't think that Trump did anything particularly egregious or off script. I don't think he was quite as obnoxious as he was in the debates with certainly Hillary Clinton back in the day. That's what I'm saying. I'm curious what you're saying. I'm curious if you're going to be tuning in for the next debate. I don't think Biden did a great job of dealing with the questions about the border. And I know that the border is a big issue for people. I'm curious who you think Trump might pick as his VP. I'm wondering if he might go for Tim Scott, given that the Republicans are looking to get gains from the black community. I know that some people think Vivek is pretty lively, but he's also quite polarizing in a way that I don't think that Tim Scott probably is. But I haven't really been tracking where he is the VP picks. I have noticed that Trump, when he goes on the campaign trail, he's asking everyone on the ground, like, who do you like for VP? Who do you like for VP? Who would be your pick? Just kind of an interesting tactic. I'm not sure how much that will influence the eventual thing, but it wouldn't surprise me if Trump is kind of listening to who's popular out there. You just clued in. Yeah, I don't think Biden's closing statement was particularly helpful. I'm going to just bring us back into their analysis so that we can hear a moment, and then we'll call it a night.
748-8921. If you're undecided, still undecided, after tonight's debate, call in at 202-748-8922. And if you've decided to support a third...
Oh, maybe someone should call in.
at 202-748-8923. Remember, you can join the conversation on X with the handle @C-SPAN, also on Facebook.com/C-SPAN, or you can text us with your first name, city, and state to 202-748-8903. The calls are in. Angie in Canton, Ohio, supporting the former president. Angie, you're up first. What is your reaction to tonight's debate? Angie?
Yes.
You're up. Good evening.
Okay. I didn't even know I had anything to say. I'm sorry.
Peter in New York, undecided. Peter, your reaction to tonight's debate?
Well, I thought that the format for tonight's debate was excellent. I thought the moderators did a great job.
Okay, I'm going to call it here because I don't really know what they're talking about here. It seems like some of this is almost from coming from before when the debate happened. So thanks, everyone, for being here. If you're here after the event, feel free to leave a comment. I read all the comments. And yeah, maybe I'll leave you with this. I think that there's an opportunity for us to reimagine democracy because I don't think that what we're seeing here is necessarily the solution that's going to take us forward in a increasingly complex 21st century globalized AI social media mediated world. I think we're going to need different types of political leadership, and I think we're going to need way more citizen participation. That's my intuition. I'm starting to get more interested in alternative thinking about democracy, that we don't just collapse democracy with representation. Given that this presidential race is going to be decided in 7 states, it means that the vast majority of the country is effectively irrelevant to this presidential race, and then it encourages candidates to be selectively listening to certain proportions of the electorate that most deliver the swing states for them. So I think we've got a representation problem, and I think so many other areas of society have been disintermediated, right? Where we now deal directly, whether it's buying your holiday, buying your insurance, getting your Uber Eats delivery to the door. And I think we might need to disintermediate something with politics. We might need ordinary people in a decentralized power having way more participation through their smartphones, through deliberative forums, citizens' assemblies. Because people closest to the pain should be closest to the power. And I think, in a sense, we have an elective aristocracy in this country here, and in most Western democracies, that once you vote, and let's be honest, most of your votes won't count in a real way in the way that we're talking about, that actually then the power is with the electeds, and the people aren't really consulted. And we have these 4-year electoral cycles, which are a very blunt feedback mechanism in a world that's now got instantaneous communication. So I think what this is pointing to is not just, is it going to be Biden or Trump, but sort of like some deeper systemic issues about what to trust, how people participate, where power lies, and how we can maybe affect that for a more suitable way of proceeding for the time that we live in. Most of our software is 250 years old in democracy, and it's really hard to get amendments. We haven't really had a substantive amendment since 1971. And I think that might make for problems of national competitiveness, and it might also create national security issues. AI is such an inherently sort of expansive technology that I think we might need different ways to govern to deal with these kind of technologies. Anyway, I don't have all the solutions. I'm just noticing and sharing and thinking that maybe this election isn't as quite as crucial as people think, because actually what it's pointing to is a system that needs to evolve. We've got the thumbs up for decentralization. All right, everyone. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for your shares. Appreciate you being here. Sleep well.